Last month was all about worthiness, empowering you to realize how worthy you are. And this month is about healing some ideas that you have either been given, taken on, or still kind of believe to be true. And I'm here to talk about the Last Judgment. And if you're new to CSC, you're like, the Last Judgment? I thought I was coming somewhere where there was no judgment. I thought I was coming somewhere where there was going to be acceptance and love. I thought I was coming somewhere where they were going to welcome me with open arms. All of that is true. All of that is absolutely true. But you see, when you believe in sin, that's like the first chapter in a book. And the end chapter is always the Last Judgment, right? But what we want to do is change your mind about what the Last Judgment really means. And once you understand what the Last Judgment means, you can accept it and live in a different way. I realized when I was preparing for this message that I always haven't been in that place of understanding what the Last Judgment really meant. And as much metaphysics as I've studied over these years, there was this one instance that still stuck with me where the Last Judgment was all about judgment. Can I share that story with you? Now, many of you know that I did a message a few years ago called A New Normal. And in that message, I talked about some powerful tools that we use to create a new normal in our lives. And I talked about the story of my mother and our relationship and how contentious it was before her death and how we had mended it through forgiveness, through the powerful teaching of forgiveness. And it was a powerful story and a powerful change in my life. But there was a little bit of the story that I left out. And that was the moment. You see, because my mother transitioned during that time. But there was a moment right before she did that something powerful happened. I'll refresh everyone's memory. My mother came to visit me. I lived in North Carolina at the time. And she took the bus from Dallas, Texas, and she came all the way to North Carolina. And she brought my nephews, a 6-month-old and an 18-month-old, and she was on the bus, and she came from North Carolina from Texas to North Carolina. Now, that's a feat in itself, right? She took the distance because she wanted to spend time with me, and I wanted to spend time with her. Little did we know that that was the last time that we would spend together. She came. We went back to West Virginia, where we're from. She visited all her friends, ate her favorite foods. We had an amazing time. And we came back to North Carolina, and she started to get a little cold. What we didn't know at the time was that was congestion building up in her lungs because she was going into heart failure. And so, this particular day, she was like, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to go lay down. And I said, okay. I put the boys down in the living room, and she went into my bedroom to take a nap. And then I heard a thump. And not wanting to wake the boys, I got up and I went into the bedroom, and she was there crawling around on the floor. And she was in a state of hysteria, and she was just feeling around. And she said, Yolanda, where did all these snakes come from? Who brought these snakes in here? What is this? I don't like this. Please get these snakes off of me. And in that moment, I was afraid too. I was like, Mom, there are no snakes. What is going on here? What is she experiencing here? She was experiencing her own thoughts, her own fear, her fear of a last judgment, a fear of a hell that she was doomed to, not because she was a bad person, but because she had accepted some beliefs about herself. And in that moment, too, I had a little bit of doubt. I was like, all this metaphysics, maybe there really is a hell. But the more I studied, the more I realized that could not be. Her perception was creating a projection based on some beliefs that weren't even true about her. My mother was an amazing woman. She was fly as she could be. She was beautiful, dark-skinned, fabulous, and that woman could wear any color in the rainbow and make it look good. She was opinionated, but she was compassionate. But she also lived what many would consider a hard life. She lived in poverty. She lived with sexual abuse. She lived with abuse, domestic abuse. So much so that the man that she married decided she was too beautiful and took a knife and disfigured her face. Every day she had to live with this idea, wait, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I really am bad. Maybe I deserved everything, including the death of my youngest son to a drunk driver. Maybe all of those things were running through her mind in that last moment. Those ideas of hell and sin and retribution. I called the ambulance. They rushed her to the hospital. But you see, I never got to have this talk with her. I never got to tell her what the Last Judgment really meant, because at that time I wasn't sure about it. But I call you all my family now. And can I share with my family what the Last Judgment really means? Let me tell you from A Course in Miracles perspective of what this thing really is all about, so that we can relax into our worth and our sinlessness. You see, we think that it's all, and it's probably the most fearful idea that we all have held on to for some time, right? This idea that you're going to burn in hell, this idea of sin and retribution, that no matter what you do, you can't recover from it. The dictionary even talks about it. There will be a hell. God will determine who gets in and who doesn't. The Bible even speaks of it, this idea that there will be a separating out of the sheep from the goats, and really what that is the sinners from the holy people. But that is not what it's about. I'm going to read from the Course in Miracles so that we can get free, y'all. Free like my mother is now. Free like we deserve to be every minute of the day. The Course in Miracles says this: the Last Judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by each of us with the help of the Holy Spirit. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment, however much you may believe that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept totally opposite to right-mindedness. And the aim of the Last Judgment is to restore your right mind. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. Doesn't that sound better? A process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not worthy within themselves. It's not God that's going to do it. It is us that has to come to the realization of our worth. It is us that has to lay down those ideas of sin and retribution and punishment. It is us that have to give up the idea of judgment. We have to do that. And when we do that, there is a realization, oh, what is worthy of me? What is worthy of me as God created me? What is worthy of me as a vessel for which God flows through, which love flows through, which life flows through? What is worthy of me, and what is not, I let it go now. This is the last time I'm going to hold on to it. That's the Last Judgment. That's the thing that I could have told my mother if I had known. But I know now, and I know she knows now, because she is no longer in the physical. She is back in the non-physical, back in the realm of knowing. But as we stand here, a physical representation, we have to take these truths with us. There is no retribution. There is no final judgment. It is an evaluation that we ourselves must do for ourselves. Can you accept that, y'all? Can you accept your role in the final judgment? That's the only thing that you have to do. God is not holding it against you. So how do we free our minds and the rest will follow? How do we do that? How do we do that? I want to talk about 3 ways that we do that. We free ourselves from this fear of the Last Judgment, from this fear of retribution, from this fear of punishment. The first way, well, I'll tell you all 3 and then you'll be ready. First is the realization that judgment is not an attribute of God. Judgment is not an attribute of God, right? Second, we're going to do some spring cleaning. It is the first day of spring. We're going to do some spring cleaning. We're going to separate the truth from the false. And finally, we're going to accept the fact that there is no other shoe. There's no other shoe to drop. Nothing else has to go wrong. There is no punishment. Those 3 things, let's talk about them.